this transgender male boxer got knocked out in 21 seconds, everyone was asking, where is the knockout video? This fight was put on by a promotion called Golden Boy Boxing, and I found the stream, a 2.5-hour stream. But guess what? There seems to be a clip missing. And people notice, look at the comments section. Why leave out Patricio Manuel getting KO'd? We all want to see it. Where was Patricio Manuel? I decided to do some digging to see why the clip of this transgender man being knocked out in 21 seconds was scrubbed from the stream, was scrubbed from this channel that has almost 500,000 subscribers and features almost all of its fights on its channel. So why did the knockout video never see the light of day? Well, that's because a transgender man getting knocked out in 21 seconds doesn't fit the narrative. Patricio was being touted as the next big thing in boxing diversity. See, Patricio became the face of Everlast. She is featured on the Olympic Channel, various talk shows, did an interview with Demi Lovato. Being transgender is lucrative. Patricio represents forward-thinking and a woke narrative. The narrative was that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. This woman has surgery, starts taking steroids and testosterone, sports a beard, and magically, she's a man. But everyone that was playing along with this fantasy had the fantasy shattered when she got punched in the face, knocked out in 20 seconds.
You know, when I was a little kid, I always thought of myself as a boy. But you learn really early on that someone like me is immediately going to be told they're a girl. So I learned to be quiet. I learned to stifle that part of me.
I will be blurring the nipples for the entirety of this video.
The thing is, about anything that you push down long enough, it will have a bad reaction. And that reaction for me was I completely disconnected from myself. I just mentally checked out so that I could continue coping through life. And it was boxing that brought me back into my body, and it was boxing that allowed me to be proud of actually what I was physically able to do. But boxing also taught me to really be introspective.
Undefeated is the key word here. In all the news articles prior to this fight, Patricio was undefeated. Women can come into men's sports as transgenders and be just as powerful, just as effective, and men can be women and women can be men.
You deviate from the norms that society has constructed. You have to fight for that identity. You have to really make it yourself. I think a lot of people in boxing who I talk to, they would come to me and say, you could have been, you know, one of the greatest female world champions. They're like, you would throw it all away to be yourself. And I tell them that's how bad I felt living that lie.
You know, it is sad that there's some mental issues going on here, some body dysmorphia. The question is why, you know, and Patricio answers it herself. Why would you leave the sport where you could dominate, which we're seeing a lot of men going into women's sports and just absolutely decimating them? Why would you go into a sport where you would be the bottom of the totem pole? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
If it meant that much to me to risk the love of my life, boxing, then they knew that it was something that was valid. No one just throws away a possible chance at going to the Olympics.
Yeah, so she was an Olympic hopeful, right? And that really was thrown away by this mental challenge.
It's gonna hurt. Living in your truth is going to hurt, but it's worth it. My pro debut was at the Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California. There's so many people that have said that it's impossible for someone like me, a trans man, to be able to compete against a non-trans man and win.
So at this point, she was undefeated, but we'll look at the records of her opponents later, but they were all literally and figuratively featherweights. They were lightweights. They were not the greatest opponents.
And I proved them all wrong that night. I walked out of that fight with my first victory, and it was a victory greater than just...
Yeah, the first person she fought against, and we'll look at the statistics, was 0-8. 0 wins, 8 losses.
Having my successful pro debut, I think that it challenged a lot of people's assumptions about what people like me are able to do. And hearing my name called and, you know, hearing my crowd and then us being brought to the center.
The real question here is how many people were supporting this fantasy, right? This narrative that a transgender man could play with pro boxers, compete with pro boxers, and actually win. Is the shattering of that narrative why the video was scrubbed from online?
The adrenaline rush of it was the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life. I want to live in a world where being yourself isn't seen as this courageous act. I want all of us to be who we are and to be unafraid and not to have to deal with every obstacle.
Yeah, be who you are, whatever, but don't get these chump opponents and say you're undefeated and the best ever when you're totally juiced up on steroids and taking on lightweights.
Just to be our true authentic self. And I think that's something that's universal across the board and around the world, regardless of your race, ethnicity, class background. So many of us are being forced into these restrictive boxes of identification, but very few of us actually fit. And I want
Yeah, if the identification is male or female, there's really only two.
to see all of us be celebrated when we fight against those specific restrictive norms.
You know, I did get a lot of comments like, hey, leave her alone. At least she's fighting up. She's punching up, you know. But she was facing absolute pushover boxers. So I dug deeper and found all the boxing records of the opponents that she has faced previously. Her first victory was over Hugo Aguilar. At the time, he was 0-8, 8 losses. Then we have Hugh Hune, who was 1-3 and had only been a pro boxer for about 1 year. Her next opponent, Alexander Gutierrez, 0-4, 0 wins, 4 losses, only had been boxing professionally, I say this in quotes because it's for Golden Boy, for 1 year. Now let's get to the dude that actually knocked her out, Joshua Brian Reyes, 4 wins, 2 losses, professional for 5 years, still a 1-star boxer. But I'm not going to play into this narrative that she is the best boxer in the world because she's thrown into the ring with a bunch of pushovers until she hits Josh here. And Josh hits back. His nickname should be Reality Check. Now you can find every other match that Patricio has boxed online, except for the one where she got knocked the F out. But let's watch a little bit of a fight that she actually won.
Here at ringside. Here we go. Round 1 of a possible 4 in the super featherweight division here on Golden Boy Fight Night, the final fight night of 2018.
I like how the mat says Fantasy Springs because that's what she's living in.
Because he is a boxer. He's been boxing his whole life, and he's a very skilled fighter at that.
Okay, you get the picture. Not exactly Mayweather-Pacquiao type fight. I'm not a huge Joe Rogan fanboy, but he did have some interesting points when he was talking about Patricio on his podcast.
Everlast just signed their first ever transgender boxer. It's a trans female to male boxer. And my first thought was, this guy's gonna get lit up. Like he goes and fights actual men.
Oh, it was female to male?
Yeah.
Well, they're all amateurs, I guess.
Maybe. Because the women competing as men, like that Everlast boxer,
Yeah.
dude, I haven't sparred in forever. I'll knock that dude the fuck out. It's just.
Let's look at Patricio before the transition.
Here at the Casillas Boxing Club in Southgate, California. A couple of my teammates are down here sparring. Of course, I'm still out of commission, so it'll be probably till August till I can start really getting in there and start sparring again. But past couple of weeks, started throwing my punches again. As you can see, feeling really better than ever.
I guess I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. What if your daughter came to you and said, you know, I'm an Olympic hopeful, but I'm trapped in the wrong body, so I'm going to throw it all away and go rough and tumble with a bunch of pushover boxers in the men's division. And everybody's going to pretend I'm the greatest and go, Hercules, Hercules. But it's all facade. It's all part of the narrative. I will say I have a hell of a lot more respect for her than those cowardly men like Leah Thomas and Laura Hubbard who are invading women's sports and taking away championships from deserving biological women. So yes, there is a knockout video, but no, it was not included in the stream. It was not included on the YouTube channel where every other fight is posted because it does not fit the narrative. But if you were wanting to see a woman get knocked out by a man, this is a pro female boxer taking on some random dude off the street.
You see these muscles? Keith, you only got 1 world title or whatever you got. I got 13. You better go play with somebody else's daughter.
What if he takes it? Yeah. Oh!
There you go.
We'll end with reading some of the posts that Patricio posted on Instagram. I'm not one to hide my face no matter the outcome. I lost last night. I trained my ass off, had great sparring, cut no corners, but sometimes shit doesn't go your way. It's a risk we all take when we step in the ring. It's what is exciting about boxing and also the most heartbreaking. What is most heartbreaking is the disillusion and the people around her that are supporting this delusion, thinking she can defeat any mid-level pro boxer. This is one of those perfect examples of reality hitting back. Anyway, what do you think about a woman going into men's sports? Is it fair game because they don't have the advantage? Or should sports be separated by men, women, and a separate category for transgenders? Leave a comment down below and don't forget to subscribe to Conservative Vibes, and I'll see you next time.